In the distant reaches of the galaxy, where stars shimmered like jewels scattered across the velvet of space, an imposing vessel drifted silently. The warship Valkyran, a masterpiece of Xerexian engineering, gleamed with advanced alloy plating and intricate circuitry that pulsed with faint blue light. It was the pride of its creators, a technological marvel designed to dominate any battlefield. Yet, in this moment, it was little more than a dormant behemoth, stranded and defenseless. The Xerexians, a proud and highly intellectual species, had always prided themselves on their technological advancements. They viewed themselves as the architects of progress, wielding knowledge far beyond the reach of lesser beings. However, their genius had a fatal flaw, an inability to adapt when things went wrong. Valkyran, for all its sophistication, was now crippled by a catastrophic core failure that no algorithm or diagnostic tool could rectify. The ship's command chamber, an expanse of shimmering crystal interfaces and holographic displays, was filled with a tense silence. Xerexian engineers hovered around a central console, their elongated, shimmering forms vibrating with agitation. Streams of data flowed across the translucent screens, but none of it offered a solution. The ship's systems, guided by flawless theoretical models, had fallen victim to an unforeseen cascade failure. Their technological pride now stood as a monument to their helplessness. High Engineer Vexel, his luminescent eyes narrowing in frustration, turned to the communication panel. "Send the signal," he commanded, his voice tinged with reluctant desperation. "But, to a human," an assistant protested, disbelief evident in their tone. "Surely one of our kind can." "Silence," Vexel snapped. "We have exhausted every option. If there is even a remote chance that this human mechanic can fix the Valkyran, we must take it." Across the vast expanse of space, aboard a modest repair vessel orbiting a mining colony, Captain David Hayes received the Xerexian summons. A seasoned mechanic with grease-streaked hands and a reputation for fixing the unfixable, David was known for his uncanny ability to understand machines as if they spoke directly to him. He read the terse message on his comm panel and let out a low whistle. "Advanced alien warship, dead in space, and they need me," he muttered, shaking his head. "Guess even the big brains need a grease monkey sometimes." It wasn't long before David's modest craft docked with the colossal Valkyran. Stepping onto the alien vessel, he was immediately struck by its sterile perfection, seamless surfaces, glowing conduits, and an eerie hum that spoke of technology light-years beyond anything Earth had developed. Yet something felt off. Machines, in David's experience, had a rhythm, a pulse. This one was missing that spark. As he walked into the command chamber, the Xerexians regarded him with thinly veiled disdain. Vexel's eyes gleamed with doubt as he addressed the human. "Captain Hayes, your reputation precedes you. But this is no primitive Earth vehicle. Our systems are complex." David smirked. "Complex, huh? Funny thing about complex systems, when they break, they're just a bunch of simple problems stacked together. Let's see what we've got." David stood before a wall of holographic displays, each projecting streams of alien code and intricate diagrams. He rubbed the back of his neck, taking in the sheer complexity of the Valkyran systems. The Xerexians hovered nearby, their luminous eyes flickering with skepticism. Despite their desperation, they clearly didn't believe a human could solve their problem. "Your tools are over there," Vexel said curtly, gesturing to an assortment of sleek instruments that looked more like art pieces than functional equipment. "Though I doubt even they will help you understand our systems." David glanced at the alien tools, then pulled a weathered multitool from his belt. "Thanks, but I brought my own," he said with a grin. "Old habits." The Xerexians exchanged puzzled glances. One muttered, "Primitive methods." David ignored them, stepping up to the core access panel. Its surface was a seamless expanse of glowing material, with no visible seams or fasteners. He ran his fingers across it, feeling for subtle vibrations. "Fancy design," he said. "But you overcomplicated it. Everything's gotta have a way in." With a practiced motion, he found a barely perceptible indentation and applied pressure. The panel hissed open, revealing a maze of conduits and crystalline components. The Xerexians watched in stunned silence. "How did you?" Vexel began. "Machines talk if you know how to listen," David interrupted. Yours just speak in riddles. He leaned into the compartment, tracing the flow of power with his hand. There's your problem, he muttered. Your quantum stabilization matrix is throwing off harmonics. Probably a feedback loop from this junction. He tapped a glowing node. The Xerexians stared blankly. That is impossible, one engineer said. Our diagnostic systems detected no such anomaly. Yeah, well, your diagnostics are too smart for their own good, David said. They're looking for something complicated. Sometimes it's the simple stuff that trips you up. He pulled a length of insulated cable from his tool belt and began jury-rigging a bypass. The Xerexians recoiled in horror. You cannot simply improvise with such crude materials, Vexel exclaimed. Watch me, David shot back. With quick, efficient movements, he secured the bypass and sealed the panel. The ship shuddered slightly as power redirected through the new circuit. The holographic displays flickered, stabilizing into coherent patterns. There we go, David said, stepping back. Core's holding steady now. The Xerexians stared at the readouts, disbelief etched on their shimmering faces. How? Vexel whispered. Like I said, David shrugged, machines talk. You just gotta know how to listen. The Xerexians were silent, their pride clearly wounded. Yet beneath their disbelief, a glimmer of respect began to form. The ship's systems hummed with renewed energy, but David's work wasn't finished. As he moved to recalibrate the power distribution, a sudden surge of energy pulsed through the ship. Alarms blared, and the core's glow flickered erratically. What now? David muttered, pulling up the diagnostics display. The stabilization field is destabilizing, an engineer shouted, panic in their voice. We must abandon the vessel before it detonates. Nobody's abandoning anything, David said firmly. Just stay out of my way. He dashed back to the access panel, prying it open again. Sparks flew as the conduits vibrated violently. The bypass he had installed was holding, but barely. If the core destabilized completely, the ship would be torn apart. You don't understand, Vexel insisted. This energy cascade is beyond containment. The laws of physics themselves are unraveling. David gritted his teeth. Physics never met a stubborn human with a wrench. Ignoring the alien protests, he dove into the circuitry, manually rerouting power through redundant pathways. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of overheating components. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked with practiced precision. Come on, he muttered. You're not dying on my watch. The ship groaned as the feedback loop intensified. The Xerexians backed away, their luminous forms dimming in fear. David's hands moved instinctively, twisting wires and fusing connections with his multi-tool. He didn't need advanced diagnostics. He could feel the ship's pulse, erratic but salvageable. Captain Hayes, this is madness, Vexel shouted. David didn't look up. Madness is giving up when you're this close to a fix. With one final connection, he sealed the panel and slammed his fist against the control interface. The ship shuddered violently, then fell into a tense silence. The core's glow stabilized, steady and strong. Core containment stabilized, an engineer reported in disbelief. David let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Told you it'd work. The Xerexians stared at him, their expressions a mix of shock and awe. Vexel approached slowly. You defied every known protocol, disregarded safety measures, and used primitive tools. And it worked, David finished, wiping sweat from his brow. Sometimes you gotta trust your gut, not a manual. The engineers examined the readouts, confirming that the core was not only stable but operating more efficiently than before. Vexel's pride wavered as he finally admitted, you have achieved what we could not. Your methods defy logic, but they are effective. David grinned. Welcome to human engineering. The warship hummed with renewed power, its systems sharper and more responsive than ever. The Valkyran surged forward, cutting through space with precision. On the holographic display, enemy vessels closed in, sleek and deadly, their weapons charging for an attack. We're outnumbered, one Xerexian engineer said grimly. David cracked his knuckles. Good thing your ship's got an upgrade. Vexel hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Captain Hayes, your modifications have enhanced the Valkyran's combat capabilities. We will require your tactical input. Gladly, David said. Reroute power from non-essential systems to the shields. And see that glowing panel? He pointed to one of the interfaces. Tie it into your targeting array. Should give you better firing accuracy. The Xerexians moved quickly, executing his instructions without further protest. Valkyran's systems thrummed with newfound efficiency. As the enemy ships unleashed a volley of plasma bolts, the warship's shields flared but held strong. Shields are stable, an engineer reported. Return fire, David commanded. The Valkyran's cannons roared to life, beams of searing energy slicing through the enemy formation. One hostile vessel exploded in a brilliant burst of light, while others scattered, trying to evade the warship's relentless assault. Vexel's luminous eyes gleamed with newfound determination. Your methods are unconventional, but effective. The ship responds better than ever before. That's because it's finally got a mechanic who listens to what it needs, David said with a grin. Machines aren't just code and metal. They've got a rhythm, a heartbeat. You just have to feel it. The battle raged on, but the tide had turned. The Valkyran danced through the chaos, its movements swift and precise. David's modifications gave it an edge the enemy couldn't anticipate. One by one, the hostile ships were either destroyed or forced into retreat. Silence fell over the command chamber as the last enemy vessel blinked out of range. The Xerexians stood in stunned silence, processing their victory. You've saved the Valkyran and us, Vexel said, his pride giving way to genuine respect. We owe you a debt, Captain Hayes. David shrugged. Just doing what I do best. Machines talk, and I listen. Maybe that's something you all can learn. Vexel inclined his head. Perhaps we will. As the tension faded, David glanced around the gleaming ship. She's a beauty, all right. Just needed a little human touch. The Xerexians exchanged glances, their arrogance tempered by newfound humility. David had shown them that sometimes intuition and adaptability could outmatch even the most advanced algorithms. As David prepared to return to his own vessel, Vexel spoke again. Would you consider staying? There is much we could learn from your unique methods. David grinned. Tempting, but I've got other ships to fix and stories to tell. With that, he turned and made his way to the docking bay, leaving the Xerexians with a newfound respect for humanity and a warship that now pulsed with the indomitable spirit of its human mechanic.